Next here, live from Paris, yellow vest protests are to be banned from the Champs-Élysées. The French Prime Minister made the announcement this Monday in the wake of the weekend's disturbances on the famous Paris Avenue. Edouard Philippe said the ban will apply for an unspecified period in the neighbourhoods that have been the most impacted. As well as Paris, the yellow vest protests will be banned from certain parts of Bordeaux and Toulouse, where repeated destruction has occurred since the protest movement began in November.
We will ban protests linked to the Yellow Vest movement in the worst affected neighbourhoods as soon as we are aware of the presence of radical elements and their intention to cause damage. I'm thinking, of course, of the Champs-Élysées in Paris, the Père Square in Bordeaux, and Capitol Square in Toulouse.
Edouard Philippe, the Prime Minister of France. Well, for analysis earlier, we heard from Lex Paulson, former political advisor to President Emmanuel Macron. He joined us earlier here on France 24.
Unfortunately, the response depends on the unveiling of violence progressively week to week. And because the Gilets jaunes movement has no set strategy with a sequence that can be anticipated, the government's forced to improvise. And I think it's made the appropriate response in this case, but it's not a strategy as much as it is a series of reactions and counter-reactions. As someone who was on the streets with the Gilets jaunes relatively early on, just as an observer, I can say that these more violent elements were there from the start, but it really seems like they're the majority or close to a much more significant proportion of the protesters now than they were before, and I think that's very troubling for the impact of the Gilets jaunes and their legacy that the movement seems to have degenerated in this way. It's very difficult to say because, of course, these people who are protesting are not necessarily the most law-abiding. They're not the ones who are checking to see what the law says before they descend on Saturday. But it is true that the government does seem to be caught off guard with the nature of the security response that is appropriate and needed. And certainly, from what I've seen and heard on the ground, there's a sense that the forces of order, as they say here, were not fully anticipating where and how they would need to respond to these protests, and it seems at times that the response has been improvised, which is unfortunate. But then again, the Gilets jaunes unpredictability is the heart of their movement, and it makes it difficult to respond to.
Lex Paulson, former advisor to Emmanuel Macron, joining us a little earlier.